Welcome to the most brutal reality show in American history where dreams don't just die, they get publicly executed on live television. And tonight, we're witnessing something unprecedented: 100,000 small businesses locked in a death match, not for fame or fortune, but for who gets to lose everything first. And the twisted genius behind this carnage is sitting in the Oval Office orchestrating the greatest economic massacre since the Great Depression with the precision of a reality TV producer who's finally found his ultimate stage. This isn't entertainment, this is economic warfare disguised as patriotic policy, and the contestants aren't volunteers, they're victims who signed up for the American dream, but got enrolled in America's Next Top Bankrupt instead, where the only prize is watching your life's work crumble while the cameras roll and the audience cheers for more blood. Meet Sarah Henderson from Columbus, Ohio, who 3 months ago was living the baker's dream, running Henderson's hometown bakery, a cozy little shop that smelled like fresh bread and hope every morning at 5 a.m. But now she's staring at wholesale flour prices that have skyrocketed 300% thanks to retaliatory tariffs that turned her ingredient suppliers into financial executioners, and every croissant she bakes now costs more to make than customers are willing to pay, turning her bakery into a monument to economic absurdity where the math of survival has been rewritten by politicians who've never needed dough or worried about payroll or felt the crushing weight of a lease payment when your cash register sounds like a funeral bell. Sarah's hands shake now, not from the early morning cold, but from the constant terror of knowing that each day might be the last time she turns on those industrial ovens that her grandmother helped her buy with a second mortgage on a house that's now worth less than the debt it carries. And the cruel irony is that she's not failing because she's bad at business, she's failing because being good at business is no longer enough when the rules get rewritten overnight by someone who thinks economics is just another reality show where ratings matter more than lives. David Martinez runs Martinez Auto Repair in Flint, Michigan, a town that already knows how to bleed, and now it's hemorrhaging again, but this time the wounds are self-inflicted by steel tariffs that have turned every wrench and bolt into a luxury item. And David, who spent 20 years building his reputation as the guy who could fix anything for anyone at a price that wouldn't break your budget, is now forced to quote repair jobs that cost more than the cars are worth because the steel in a simple brake pad now carries the weight of international trade wars and political posturing that have nothing to do with fixing transmissions and everything to do with fixing elections. His toolbox, filled with instruments his father taught him to use, has become a museum of obsolete affordability, and every morning when he opens the garage door, he's not just starting another day of work, he's participating in his own professional funeral, watching as customers drive past his shop because they can't afford to fix what's broken, just like America can't afford to fix what's broken because the people with the power to fix things are too busy breaking everything else for political theater. Maria Rodriguez built TechFlow Solutions from nothing more than a laptop and a dream in Austin, Texas, specializing in custom software for international clients who trusted her small team to deliver big results across time zones and languages. But now she's watching her client base evaporate like morning mist as trade relationships deteriorate and foreign companies decide that working with American businesses has become more trouble than it's worth, when every contract negotiation includes discussions about tariffs and political stability and whether the current administration will still be in power when the project is completed. Her employees, young, brilliant programmers who believed in the promise of a global economy, are now updating their resumes instead of updating code, and Maria finds herself having conversations about severance packages instead of software packages, while her conference room that used to buzz with international video calls now echoes with the hollow sound of canceled meetings and abandoned projects, and the startup energy that once made her office feel like a rocket ship to success has been replaced by the funeral home atmosphere of a company that's dying not from lack of vision, but from lack of stable ground to stand on. The contestants in this nightmare reality show didn't audition for their roles, they were drafted into economic conscription by policies that treat small businesses like expendable pawns in a game where only the biggest players survive, and the rules change faster than you can adapt to them. And what makes this particularly cruel is that these business owners are being eliminated not for lack of talent or effort or innovation, but because they committed the cardinal sin of being small in an economy that's being redesigned to favor only the massive corporations that can absorb losses that would destroy a family business and still have enough left over to buy politicians who will ensure the game stays rigged in their favor. The beautiful brutality of this system is that it masquerades as capitalism while actually being its opposite, a centrally planned economy, where the planning is done by lobbyists and the central authority is whoever can afford the most influence, and the small business owners who actually embody the entrepreneurial spirit that America claims to celebrate are being systematically eliminated like contestants who don't fit the show's narrative arc. Sarah's bakery used to be the heart of her neighborhood, where kids stopped for cookies after school, and elderly couples shared coffee and stories about the old days when businesses were built to last, not just to survive the next policy change. But now her customer base is shrinking faster than her profit margins as people tighten their belts and choose between fresh bread and rent payments, and the community gathering place she worked so hard to create is becoming a reminder of what happens when economic policy is written by people who've never had to choose between buying ingredients and paying utilities. The glass display cases that once showcased her artisanal creations now feel like museum exhibits of a dying craft, and every morning when she arrives at 4 a.m. to start the ovens, she's not just beginning another day of baking, she's participating in a ritual of resistance against forces that want to turn every neighborhood into a chain store wasteland where character is replaced by corporate efficiency and human connection is replaced by algorithmic optimization. David's repair shop represents 40 years of accumulated knowledge and reputation built one satisfied customer at a time, but now he's watching that legacy dissolve as quickly as transmission fluid because the parts he needs to fix cars cost more than the cars are worth, and his customers are faced with the impossible choice of paying him prices that seem outrageous or driving vehicles that are becoming increasingly dangerous and unreliable. The waiting room where customers used to sit patiently reading magazines and trusting that whatever was wrong could be fixed at a reasonable price has become a place where difficult conversations happen about totaled vehicles and financial impossibility, and David finds himself in the heartbreaking position of having to tell people that their transportation lifeline is beyond saving, not because the mechanical problems are too complex, but because the economic problems are too overwhelming. Maria's company was built on the premise that talent and innovation could overcome any obstacle, but she's learning that talent and innovation are powerless against arbitrary policy decisions that can destroy market relationships overnight, and her international clients who once saw American small businesses as reliable partners now view them as unstable risks whose government might derail any project with a single tweet or trade war escalation. The ping pong table and free snacks that once symbolized startup culture now feel like props in a stage play about entrepreneurship, while the real drama is playing out in boardrooms where executives decide whether American vendors are worth the political risk, and the answer increasingly is no, they're not worth it, when there are alternatives that don't come with the baggage of an unpredictable political system that treats international commerce like a personal vendetta. The sadistic genius of this reality show format is that it takes the genuine suffering of real people and packages it as entertainment for an audience that's been conditioned to believe that economic pain is just another form of competitive sport where winners and losers are determined by market forces rather than policy choices, and the contestants are encouraged to blame themselves for their failures rather than questioning why the game is rigged against them from the start. Sarah beats herself up for not diversifying her supply chain, as if any small bakery could have anticipated that flour would become a geopolitical weapon, and David wonders if he should have learned more about steel futures, as if auto mechanics are supposed to be international trade experts, and Maria questions whether she should have focused on domestic clients, as if anyone could have predicted that global cooperation would be sacrificed for nationalist theater. The cameras are rolling, and the host steps forward with that familiar smirk that launched 1,000 bankruptcies, and tonight's elimination ceremony isn't happening in some Hollywood soundstage. It's happening in the heartland of America, where the only voting that matters is done by creditors, and the only immunity challenge is trying to stay solvent long enough to see another sunrise, and our contestants have been through the ringer of what we like to call the Great American Shakeout, where small businesses get shaken until only the corporate giants remain standing, and the beautiful thing about this system is that it's completely legal, completely brutal, and completely devastating to anyone who believed that hard work and good intentions were enough to survive in the land of opportunity that's been redesigned as the land of consolidation. Sarah's elimination came on a Tuesday morning when her landlord delivered the eviction notice with the same casual indifference as someone delivering a pizza, except this delivery was the end of everything she'd built, and the landlord, a man named Frank who used to stop by for coffee and Danish every morning before his construction job started, had tears in his eyes as he handed her the papers because he knew he wasn't just serving legal documents, he was serving the death certificate for a dream that had fed his family for 5 years and made his neighborhood feel like a real community instead of just another collection of buildings where strangers happened to live. The bakery that once smelled like heaven now smells like defeat, and the display cases that showcase Sarah's artistry are empty except for a few day-old pastries that nobody can afford, and the cash register that used to sing with the music of small transactions now sits silent like a tombstone marking the grave of another American small business that died not from lack of customers, but from lack of affordable ingredients in a trade war that nobody asked for and nobody wanted except the politicians who needed something to blame for problems they created with previous policies that also destroyed small businesses in different ways. David's garage became a museum of automotive archaeology, where broken cars sit like mechanical fossils waiting for parts that cost more than the vehicles are worth, and his customers have started an informal support group in the parking lot where they share stories about how they're all slowly losing their independence, one broken alternator at a time, because public transportation doesn't exist in their part of Michigan, and walking to work isn't an option when your job is 20 miles away, and the choice between fixing your car and feeding your family isn't really a choice at all. It's just another form of economic torture designed to keep working people trapped in a cycle of poverty that benefits nobody except the corporations that can afford to wait out the small business apocalypse and then swoop in to buy up the commercial real estate at fire sale prices. The tools that David's father gave him, tools that were supposed to be passed down to his son, are now being sold on eBay to strangers who don't know the history of each wrench and socket set. And the knowledge that took 40 years to accumulate is being scattered to the winds like ashes from a cremation that nobody wanted to attend, but everybody had to witness, because this is what happens when policymakers treat economics like a game show. Losers just disappear and the winners get to pretend they earned their victory through merit rather than through systematic elimination of competition. Maria's final client call was with a company in Germany that had been working with TechFlow Solutions for 3 years on a project that was supposed to revolutionize supply chain management, but the German executives explained with genuine regret that their board of directors had decided that working with American companies had become too risky given the political climate and the constant threat of new tariffs or trade restrictions that could derail projects overnight, and they were terminating all contracts with American vendors not because of quality issues or performance problems, but because political instability had made American businesses toxic assets in the international marketplace. The irony wasn't lost on Maria that her company, which specialized in creating efficient systems, was being destroyed by the most inefficient system of all, a government that changes direction with every news cycle and treats international relationships like personal feuds and economic policy like reality television, where drama is more important than outcomes and ratings are more important than results, and the collateral damage is just the cost of doing business in the attention economy where businesses like hers are just background noise in someone else's political theater. The elimination ceremony reaches its crescendo as our host stands before a backdrop of empty storefronts and abandoned factories and explains to the viewing audience that what they're witnessing isn't just the failure of individual businesses, it's the systematic dismantling of the economic ecosystem that made America great in the first place. And the beautiful irony is that this destruction is being carried out in the name of making America great again, as if greatness could be achieved by eliminating the very entrepreneurs and small business owners who embody the innovative spirit that built this country's economy in the first place. The contestants didn't lose because they were weak or incompetent or lazy. They lost because they were playing a game where the rules were written by people who profit from their failure, and the referees are owned by the same corporations that benefit from eliminating small business competition, and the audience has been conditioned to believe that this is just how capitalism works, when in reality, this is how capitalism dies when it gets corrupted by crony politics and regulatory capture, and the myth of free markets gets replaced by the reality of rigged markets. Sarah stands in her empty bakery for the last time, running her hands along the counter where she used to roll out pie dough and knead bread and create the kind of food that made people remember why they loved their neighborhood. And she's not crying anymore, because she's past the point of tears and into the realm of numbness that comes when you realize that everything you believed about fairness and opportunity and the American dream was just a story told to keep you working while other people wrote the rules that would eventually destroy you. And the saddest part isn't that she's losing her business. The saddest part is that she's losing her faith in the system that she thought would reward her for working hard and treating people fairly and creating something beautiful in a world that seems determined to destroy beauty in favor of efficiency and profit margins and shareholder value and all the other abstractions that don't smell like fresh bread or sound like children laughing or feel like the warm handshake of a customer who's become a friend. David locks up his garage for the final time, and the sound of the metal doors rolling shut echoes through the empty building like the closing credits of a movie that nobody wanted to see. And he thinks about his father, who started this business with nothing but a toolbox and a dream, and who believed that honest work and fair prices would always find customers, and who never could have imagined that his son would lose everything, not because he wasn't good at fixing cars, but because politicians decided that steel should be more expensive and parts should be harder to get, and small businesses should be sacrificed on the altar of trade war rhetoric that sounds tough on television but translates into economic death sentences for people who never signed up to be casualties in someone else's political battles. The keys to the garage feel heavier than they should as he drops them in the mailbox for the landlord, and he wonders what he's going to tell his own son about the American dream and whether it's even worth passing down tools that might become obsolete, not because of technological change, but because of policy change, and whether the next generation will even have the opportunity to build something with their hands and their hearts and their sweat equity in a world that seems to value only scale and efficiency and the kind of ruthless optimization that treats human beings like spreadsheet entries. Maria's office space that once buzzed with international conference calls and innovative problem-solving now echoes with the hollow sound of emptiness, and the ping-pong table that symbolized startup culture has been sold along with the computers and the coffee machine and all the other props of entrepreneurial optimism, and she's left with nothing but the memory of what it felt like to build something from nothing and the bitter knowledge that she didn't fail because her ideas weren't good enough, or her execution wasn't strong enough, or her team wasn't talented enough, but because she had the misfortune of being small in a world that's being redesigned to crush anything that isn't massive and connected and politically protected. The laptop where she wrote her first line of code and built her first client relationship now sits in a box with her other personal belongings, and she's not sure if she'll ever open it again, because the dream of being an entrepreneur has been replaced by the reality of being an economic refugee in her own country, fleeing from policies that treat innovation as a threat and small business as collateral damage in a war that nobody can win, but everybody has to fight. The host delivers the final monologue with the satisfied smile of someone who's just witnessed the successful completion of a long-term project and explains to the audience that what they've just seen isn't really a reality show. It's a documentary about the real reality of American economic policy in the 21st century, where the greatest nation on earth systematically destroys its own entrepreneurs and small business owners and calls it progress, and the contestants in this show didn't volunteer to be eliminated. They were drafted into economic conscription by policies that treat their failure as acceptable casualties in a war against imaginary enemies, and the prizes in this competition aren't million-dollar contracts or endorsement deals, but unemployment benefits and bankruptcy protection, and the hollow satisfaction of knowing that their sacrifice contributed to making some already wealthy people even wealthier, and some already powerful people even more powerful, and the American dream even more distant and unattainable for the next generation of entrepreneurs who will learn from their example that the real lesson of capitalism isn't that hard work pays off, but that hard work gets you eliminated unless you're big enough to buy the politicians who write the rules that determine who wins and who loses and who gets to call themselves successful and who gets to be forgotten.